Welcome to the early odds analysis for UFC Kansas City. This is actually meant to be a exclusive for the YouTube membership folks, but I thought I fumbled a bag in terms of not at least showing you guys what this show would all be about before I actually put it on the YouTube membership exclusively. So last week, a couple of people got to see what the show was all about and they seemed to enjoy it. So I thought I'd put it out to the public for the second edition and then go back to putting it behind the YouTube membership, which is what the whole goal of this show or segment was initially for. Now, this show was pretty much just to give an early odds analysis of the upcoming or the following week's UFC event. So this week is actually UFC 287 fight week, but next week is UFC Kansas City, and the odds makers have done a damn good job of putting out a couple weeks ahead in terms of the odds for the upcoming UFC events. And I have a lot of people usually hitting me up and saying, hey, what are your thoughts on this fight? And I'm like, I haven't even gotten to that. I'm still focused on the upcoming fight week. So what I thought I would do is just put out a segment where I just look at the odds for the following week's event, pre-research, and just give my early leans. You know, my memory is not the greatest in terms of certain things, but there are some fights that usually stick out more than others. And I will try to, as you guys can see on the side of the screen here, I'll give you my strong lean, my medium lean, and then my weakest leans as well. So you guys can get an idea of where my head is at before I actually get into the research of it. Now, obviously, when the final prediction comes out, which initially comes out on the Patreon through the Best Predictions article, and then obviously on my flagship podcast, the MMA Lockcast, it might differ from my pre-tape lean here, but at least you guys can get an idea of where my head is at and put it up against your own lean or your own research, and then decide whether you want to pull the trigger earlier than most folks, or if you just want to wait it out and see what the final predictions are and see what everybody else is saying about it. But I thought I'd be the first on the block to at least give you guys my thoughts on the following week's UFC card, and the best way that you can do it is through the YouTube membership, which you can hit that join button right below this video and support your boy while doing so. And then lastly, I'll be adding one more perk, at least for the foreseeable future. I'll be adding a members-only live stream, which I'll be doing once a week. Once we get a good group of guys together for the YouTube membership, I'm going to put out a poll, see what the best time is to do that live stream so that the majority of you guys can participate. And then maybe in the future, when it starts to grow even more, we'll do a little bit more live streams on a weekly basis just to talk to you guys some more and get your questions and comments and all that stuff. And we can chat back and forth as well. So there you guys go. Just selling the YouTube membership there. Again, link right below. Just hit that join button and you guys will get a new episode of the early odds analysis every Tuesday for the following week's UFC event. Hope you guys enjoyed. All right, let's not waste any more time. The meaning of these is just to be brief. Like, let's quickly go through most of the fights here, give my quick thoughts on the odds, and then go from there. So, again, this is UFC Kansas City, headlined by Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen. Big fight for Arnold Allen, finally getting that, possible number one contendership fight. The guy's been relatively inactive throughout his career, but now he gets the name that he's been looking for, and this will more than likely put him in line for a title shot if he is able to get his hand raised this weekend. As of right now, the odds are currently plus 150 for Arnold Allen, minus 175 for Max Holloway. And Max Holloway is a strong lean for me in this fight. Now, Max is coming off that loss to Alexander Volkanovski, who we can all agree is probably going to go down as one of the greatest 145ers of all time. So we got to give the 31-year-old Max Holloway a pass. I know that there's going to be some narratives this week that he's probably washed at this point in time, and there's no way that we can trust a guy like Max Holloway. But the reason that I sided with Dan Hooker the last time around against Arnold Allen was the fact that we knew we were going to get output and activity and volume from a guy like Dan Hooker compared to the more conservative approach that Arnold Allen normally takes. But Allen obviously saw how compromised Dan Hooker was, and he was able to get to him very quickly and get the finish quickly thereafter. The Calvin Kattar fight, we didn't really get to see play out that much, so I don't want to take too much from that. But maybe once I do my research, I'll be able to extract a couple of things that I can use in terms of making my final prediction. But Max Holloway has all the tools you would want to beat a guy like Arnold Allen. Good movement, good footwork, good output. That's the main thing, the output. Obviously, he's going to get hit here, and people might take the narrative of, look at Arnold Allen and how we dispatched Dan Hooker. We know Max Holloway can take some shots, and there's no way that Arnold Allen will be able to keep that type of an onslaught on for the entirety of 5 rounds, or even quickly enough to get Max Holloway out of there too fast. So I like Max Holloway here around that minus 170 line. I don't know what the public is going to do in terms of how this line is going to shift come fight week. Maybe Holloway still gets the fan love, or people take the recency bias on Arnold Allen and take him to win this fight. But I like this minus 175 line where it's currently at. Going by the Tapology order here, it seems like we got Billy Q versus Edson Barboza in the co-main event here. And in terms of odds, we got minus 160 on Billy Q and plus 140 on Edson Barboza. Now we know what Billy Q's game is all about, right? He takes a, I like to call it the Homer Simpson approach, but it's much better than the Homer Simpson approach. He usually is down early in fights, but he does such a good job in terms of putting the pressure and pace on his opponents that he really starts to take over in that second and third round. And that's what he can do here against Edson Barboza. But that early going is going to be tough against such a heavy and dynamic striker like Barboza. But that man has taken so much damage throughout his career that I don't know if he'll be able to have what it takes to get Billy Q out of there early. And then I think as this fight starts to drag on, we'll see Billy take over and maybe even get that finish, which is why I currently have Billy Q as a medium lean for this upcoming fight. Next up, we got Dustin Jacoby against Azamat Murzakanov, and I have Dustin Jacoby as my medium lean here as a minus 200 favorite against the plus 170 underdog Azamat Murzakanov. We know what Dustin Jacoby is all about, right? Good striking, good technique, good fundamentals. He does a very good job in terms of setting up traps and springing them later on his opponents. He has a very active kicking game that he can implement to keep that distance and utilize his movement to stay away from big strikes from his opponent. And Murzakanov really not turning out to be the fighter that we expected from him, and we see that his wrestling game could use a lot of work. We see his striking game is pretty much just rendered to big explosive shots every now and then that have bailed him out of bad fights or bad performances, most notably the Tafon and Chukwi fight. But I think that we'll see Jacoby showcase his discipline, showcase his showmanship as a striker, and stay safe at distance, picking apart Azamat Murzakanov and winning this fight. I don't know if we'll see some late money here coming in on Murzakanov throughout the week, but I think it's a decent spot to maybe just stay on the outside. I think people might just try to pick up on that Murzakanov love here, take that plus 170, and we could potentially get a better line on Dustin Jacoby come fight week. So I'd stay patient on that one and possibly try to take advantage of a better line later on next week. All right, next up, we got Pedro Munoz going up against Chris Gutierrez. Same line as the previous fight that we just talked about. Minus 200 on Gutierrez, plus 170 on Pedro Munoz. And I'm a Gutierrez fan. I'm a Factory X fanboy, and this is back-to-back fights now with Factory X guys. And we saw Chris Gutierrez, pick up that big win over Frankie Edgar last time around. I believe that was in November. But we know we got to put an asterisk beside that fight, considering what Frankie Edgar was showing up that night in 2022. But Gutierrez, good calf kicking game, good striking game, very disciplined, doesn't overextend too much, usually waits for his openings and springs his traps at that point. And then Pedro Munoz, we know what he brings to the table. Calf kicker in his own right as well, moves forward, throws big shots, no real technique or anything, but pretty much just pressures his opponent the entire time and tries to either knock them out, disable them with his leg kicks, and then just hope that's enough for him to get his hand raised. But against the higher levels of competition, it's not going to be that easy for him. And I think that Gutierrez is really coming into his own here, and I think that this will be a solid fight for him to pick up another win. I think that line might start to steam a little bit more in Gutierrez's favor, so I think around that minus 200 range, not a bad way to approach it. He's the much better overall fighter here, and as long as his durability holds up, I think he'll be able to keep this fight in his range and pick Pedro Munoz apart en route to a decision victory. I believe I have him as my medium lean here. That is correct. I like me some Gutierrez. Next up, we got... I'm shifting through all these slides here to make sure that I'm getting the right order. Next up, we got the Carpenter, Clay Guida, going up against Rafa Garcia. In terms of odds, we currently have Rafa Garcia around minus 220, plus 185 on Clay Guida. Obviously, Clay Guida on the tail end of his career, still picking up some wins here and there, but we know that his game is pretty much just hop around a lot, throw some volume, maybe land some takedowns. But as he keeps fighting better guys, in my opinion, he's going to struggle to implement an effective game plan. And I think he'll struggle to do that here against the much stronger Garcia. Garcia has had a little bit of a roller coaster of a UFC career thus far, but I think he is the better striker. And I think his defensive grappling should keep him safe enough in this matchup for him to get his hand raised over the veteran. Obviously, his youth will come into play here as well as his athleticism and explosiveness at times, but I think he'll do a good enough job defensively so that he can dish out more damage and make it look better for the judges. Give me some Rafa Garcia as a weak lean, though, because, again, Clay Guida could muster up some shit. We never know, but I do lean Rafa Garcia here in this fight. Next up, we got the light heavyweight debut of Mr. Tanner Boser. He goes up against Iwan Kutilaba. In terms of odds, we currently got almost a pick of minus 120 on Iwan Kutilaba, plus 100 for Tanner Boser. I lean the Canadian here, and not just because I'm a Canadian myself, but I really think that this is a good matchup for him, for people to be reminded of what his striking game is like. And I think he has decent enough durability to deal with that early onslaught of Kutilaba, and then he can just go back to his leg kicking game. That is what brought him to prominence in the first place through his regional MMA career, was just destroying the legs of his opponents. He's even picked up a couple victories by leg kick KO, and I think that he can do that once again. That will really take away the pop and the power striking game of Kutilaba, and I think that Boser is good enough defensively in terms of his wrestling to be able to keep this fight upright. Again, he struggled a little bit. I believe it was against Alir Latifi. But I think that, at this lower weight class, being a little bit stronger now, and then hopefully having better movement so he can damage that lead leg of Kutilaba before Kutilaba can implement a wrestling game, I think that we'll see Boser start to pull away with this fight. Again, weak lean on Tanner Boser, though. So maybe tape will reaffirm what I'm thinking and make it a stronger lean and potentially a play as well. Got a strong lean here in Bruna Brazil, who makes her UFC debut after getting her Contender Series contract, or after getting her UFC contract through the Contender Series. She is coming in as a pretty hefty favorite here. Let me just get the number. Minus 230. She is over Denise Gomez, who's coming in at plus 195. Now, Gomez obviously got her UFC contract through the Contender Series on the same season, but she already made her short notice UFC debut, where she came up short against Loma Lookboonmee in a pretty close, I wouldn't say close fight. I think Lookboonmee pretty much won that pretty decisively, but there were some bright spots for Gomez in that fight. Both women primarily strikers, but I think that Brazil's height and reach advantage in this fight would allow her to stay safe at distance. She's a very patient striker, and not often do you see her get taken advantage of in terms of getting taken to the ground, and I think that's going to continue to play true here, allowing her to keep the much stronger power puncher Denise Gomez on the outside, and then we'll see Brazil really put it together in terms of numbers, output, and volume. I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit more of a refined game from her this time around. Maybe take advantage of the grappling advantage she could possibly have. Again, maybe tape will make me switch my lean in terms of who will have the better in the grappling, but I do like Bruna here to just overall be the better fighter. I think minus 230 is a fair enough line on her here, and I'd kind of be surprised if we see some buyback on the Gomez side, so you might see Brazil as a bigger favorite come fight week. Next up, we're going to go with Bill Algeo going up against TJ Brown. And I have a medium lean here on Bill Algeo, who's, I believe, trying to spring back from a loss. I can't recall the last fight on his record, but he is a minus 150 favorite here over TJ Brown, who's coming in at plus 130. TJ Brown, mediocre fighter, right? A lot of people had a lot of confidence in him when he fought Shailan Nurdimbeka and came up short in that fight as a big favorite. He's a decent overall fighter, has some good striking, has some good grappling, but I think that Bill Algeo was squirmy enough to just keep this fight in the stand-up realm where he could potentially have the advantage in terms of output, landing the cleaner, longer shots from distance, and then mixing it up enough in the grappling to possibly have more success than what TJ Brown brings to the table. Not to mention, I think Bill Algeo also has the grappling and cardio advantage in this matchup. Maybe Brown is the better wrestler, but I think that Algeo can do better and more effective work and make it look better for the judges. Minus 150, fair enough line. Maybe we'll get some more action on Algeo, pushing him up to around that minus 200 range. But again, I got to dust up on either guy still, but I'm going to go with the medium lean here on Bill Algeo. Another strong lean coming in here, and I was kind of surprised to see the odds when I got to this fight. We got Piera Rodriguez coming in as, again, this fight's a pick 'em actually, minus 110 on both sides. She's going up against Jillian Robertson, and Jillian Robertson, we know her game. Desperation takedowns, get that jiu-jitsu going, submission over position, giving up great positions to try to lock up a submission. If she can't get it going, then she usually succumbs to the, whatever the other opponent is good at. And I think that Piera Rodriguez is a good enough wrestler that she can keep this fight in the standing or the stand-up, and from there she'll be able to land more significant strikes, do the better work with her boxing, with her clinch work, with her kicks. I think she's a better overall fighter here. I'm not sure what people's holdup with Rodriguez is at this point, but again, Robertson, way more UFC experience and a very high-level grappler, specifically with her jiu-jitsu. But I think that we've seen enough good things with Rodriguez with her defensive grappling that she should be able to stay safe in those spots against Jillian and then beat her up on the feet with more significant strikes. I don't know if she'll be able to finish her, but I think she'll be able to do a better job in terms of making it look better for the judges. And I think that we'll see Robertson struggle to get a submission here. So one thing with Robertson, she used to be my bae in terms of betting the unders in her fights, or under 2.5s. But as she starts taking steps up in competition, it was harder and harder for her to get finishes. And then it was even harder for her opponents to end up getting finishes as well, because she's just durable enough to withstand enough damage and stay in fights. But I do like Piera Rodriguez, and I think she's going to start to pull away as the favorite as fight week goes on. So to get an even number on her here, I think is a damn good spot to just pull the trigger. Again, this is pre-tape. I might change my pick, or I might not have as strong of a lean on her after the tape. But as of right now, from what I remember, from the tape that I can remember seeing of both of these women, I think that Piera Rodriguez is a damn good spot, which is why she's a strong lean for me for this UFC Kansas City card. Next up, Daniel Zellhuber will be a weak lean for me here. He goes up against the veteran Lando Vannata. In terms of odds, I believe it was very close here. Yeah, we got minus 120 on Zellhuber, which is a far cry from the minus 300, 400 line that he was at in his UFC debut against Trey Ogden. Plus 100 the return on Lando Vannata. Again, Vannata is always one of those wild card guys. You never know what kind of guy you're going to get. Is he going to be the wrestler? Is he going to be the flashy striker? Is he going to be the guy that doesn't even bother putting his foot on the gas and letting the fight slip by? Zellhuber, I think he has a tremendous amount to still improve on, but I think the big part of his game that kind of maybe saw him lose last time around was just the inexperience at a high level, the inexperience being inside a UFC cage. And I think he kind of froze up in a lot of those exchanges, which allowed his opponent to get ahead of him and ultimately win that fight. And obviously, I don't want to just blame Zellhuber. Obviously, Trey Ogden came with a tremendous game plan to win that fight, but we didn't see the Zellhuber that we were promised, especially after what we witnessed from him on the Contender Series. I think the kid still has a tremendous amount of potential, but he still has a lot to learn. And this is another step up in competition in terms of just a tested veteran like Lando Vannata. But I still think that Zellhuber has what it takes to potentially put together a better body of work, maybe have some more confidence in his striking, utilizing his range, and just touching up Lando from distance and taking home a decision victory. Weak lean here, but I think that this could be a bounce back spot for Mr. Daniel Zellhuber. Next up, I got another weak lean here on Lucy Pudilova, who goes up against Jocelyn Edwards. In terms of odds, we got Pudilova coming in as the minus 140 favorite, plus 120 the return on Jocelyn Edwards. Pudilova made a successful return to the UFC cage last time around, and I think that's going to play into her confidence going into this matchup, and I just think she's the far more aggressive fighter compared to Jocelyn Edwards. Edwards has had decent work in terms of just putting output on her opponents and staying safe at distance and kind of muzzling her opponents, because it seems like a lot of fighters really don't want to close that distance and get in on her, which allows her to just operate safely at distance. I don't know if Pudilova is going to give her that comfort, though. I think Pudilova will crash the distance. I think she'll go for takedowns. And I think she's learned a lot from her original stint in the UFC. And now that she's back at the highest stage of mixed martial arts, I think we'll see a complete mixed martial arts performance from her. So I think minus 140 is a solid enough line for her. She's way more effective in terms of what she'll be able to do compared to what Edwards will. And I'd be surprised if she ends up getting muzzled as most of Edwards' last couple of opponents have. So give me Pudilova here. Weak lean, but it might turn into a stronger lean after I end up running the tape. But I do like Pudilova in this spot. Another weak lean here, and it might be a pretty unpopular one. It's going to be Aaron Phillips. He is currently a plus 155 underdog to the UFC debutant Gaston Bolanos, who comes in as a minus 180 favorite. Now, I don't know too much about Bolanos other than the fact that he used to fight for Bellator, and he used to be or probably still is, a high-level kickboxer. That just automatically makes me want to take the underdog in Aaron Phillips, who I know is a tried and tested veteran in terms of a complete mixed martial artist, and he might have the advantage in terms of being able to take this fight to the ground. If I remember correctly, I could be off on this, but I think he's a BJJ black belt. I believe he trains out of the MMA lab in Arizona, and I think those good things will... Actually, no, he has his own gym. I believe it's out of Arizona, or it could be out of Louisiana. Again, that's why tape is important. But from the top of my head, a far more complete mixed martial artist, Bolanos' striking may be able to keep him in this fight in terms of keeping this fight upright and damaging Aaron Phillips enough. Obviously, Phillips hasn't been tremendously active either, and that could end up playing against him in this matchup. But I think as a complete mixed martial artist, you got to lean with Phillips, at least pre-tape, and as the underdog. But again, he is a very weak lean for me in this matchup. But just from knowing as little as I do about both of them, I think Phillips should end up getting his hand raised in this fight. We got a medium lean here on Matthias Nicola, who ends up taking on one of my favorite guys, Brandon Royval. Right now, this is the second fight on the card, but I think they're going to end up changing it, probably putting it on the main card, considering that this is a high-level flyweight fight. These guys are right in that title hunt. Maybe a win or two gets them a title shot, but surprise on Tapology that it's so low to the bottom. But in terms of odds, we got Matthias Nicolau as the minus, where do we have it here? Minus 160 favorite over the plus 140 Brandon Royval. Nicolau, way more technical, way more disciplined with his approach compared to the chaotic nature in which Brandon Royval normally fights. And I think that's what's going to end up biting him in the ass here. I've said in the past that I've picked Brandon Royval because he is just so comfortable in the chaos that he presents whenever he fights. But I think that is going to end up playing against him here, against a much more technically sound and much more disciplined Matthias Nicolau. Nicolau was the better technical striker. He's a BJJ black belt. I think he just has all the advantages, as most opponents do, over Brandon Royval. It's just, can Royval create enough chaos that he can cause some frustration in his opponent and then eventually take advantage of that? I just don't know if he can do that here against a complete guy like Matthias Nicolau. And I feel like after tape, it might turn from a medium lean to a strong lean on Matthias Nicolau. But as of right now, I got to do my dust up. I got to remember what exactly Nicolau is good at and how he can take advantage of that chaotic style that Royval brings to the cage. But as of right now, medium lean on Matthias Nicolau. And then last fight, according to Tapology, is going to be a very weak lean on the returning Zach Cummings, who currently is a minus 245 favorite to the plus 210, and returning Ed Herman. Very surprised that this fight is happening because I thought both these guys were tired, if I'm being honest. And I can't recall how long it's been exactly since either guy has competed. From the top of my head, I believe the last time Ed Herman fought was UFC... I think it was 267. I think that was the number. 265. Sirigan against Derek Lewis, August of 2021, where he got leg kicked to shit by Alonzo Menafield. And I think I can't remember if he won that fight in a controversial fashion or whatever it was, but he got bailed out by a bad groin or a body kick, I think it was, that Ed Herman was playing up to a little bit. But either way, both these guys way past their prime. Surprised they're still fighting. I believe Zach Cummings has a little bit of a tie to Kansas City, so maybe that's why he wanted to end up fighting in this fight, or at least taking this matchup to fight in front of his home crowd. But yeah, I lean Cummings here. I think he's the one that's closer to his prime. I think he's good enough durability to put it on Ed Herman, and then maybe even take this fight to the ground where he can use his superior jiu-jitsu and possibly get a finish there. Minus 245, though, I think that's a little bit wide for two guys that haven't competed in a while and two guys that are way past the primes of their career. But I'm still going to lean with Zach Cummings, albeit a weak lean. All right, there you guys go. The early odds analysis, rifling through every single fight on the Kansas City card, giving my quick thoughts on all the odds. Maybe you guys can take some substance from this and put it up against your own information and try to take advantage of some of these early lines. Again, this will strictly be a YouTube membership perk. So if you want to hit that join button below, you'll get access to these videos every Tuesday talking about the following week's UFC event. And again, within the next couple of weeks, I'll eventually start a members only live stream as well, where we can chit chat about whatever you guys want once a week. And then maybe down the road, a couple months down the road, when this membership thing starts to blow up, I'll add more perks to the YouTube membership, but I'll also add more weekly streams as well, so I can chit chat with you guys, answer any questions, and just have a damn good time. All right, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Hit that like and subscribe below if you haven't already. Even if you don't want to hit the join and join the YouTube membership, just support your boy at least in that much. And then obviously check out the MMA Lockcast for UFC 287, which dropped yesterday. Thursday, the Locky Trinity. Friday, 3 best prop bets. And then we're right back at it to do it once again next week. Good luck on all your action. Also, lastly, PFL Week 2 breakdown strictly on the Patreon. You guys already know what's up. All right, good luck on your action this week, folks, and I'll see you guys again at the end of the week. Peace.